So Groovy. We're gonna start with introductions, and if you'll give us your name and what chapter you're part of, and your expectations for this meeting. You've got 2 minutes each. If you go over 1 minute, I will tell you you've got 1 minute left, and I will mute you at 2 minutes. So let's start with Toya.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning or afternoon, wherever everyone is at. My name is Toya Vick. I reside in Moreno Valley, California. I am looking forward to finding out which local chapter that I am a part of. And what I'm seeking to learn from the meeting is everything possible. This is something new. I know it's so exciting, and I'm just ready to get going. Thank you so much.
So
and
glad to have you here, Toya. Wow, great that you're here. Amani?
Yes, I'm Imani Floyd. I'm residing in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm actually in Gastonia today, George, but yeah, we are, I just joined as well around the same time Toya did, and I'm not sure, George, what chapter are we?
Currently the Triad chapter, soon to be the Piedmont chapter. Triad is with Winston-Salem and Greensboro, and we will be Charlotte, Piedmont. Cool. All right, then Ian, talk to us.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I am Ian Zaborti. I'm principal man of the Western Bands of the Shoshone Nation of Indians in Las Vegas, Nevada. I don't know which chapter I am a part of as well, so we'll figure that out. Yeah, that's where we're
Good
at.
to have you here. Welcome all WILF members. I don't know if there's a Las Vegas chapter. Mary and then Philip Cole. Mary, go ahead.
Morning. Good morning, everybody. I'm in the Madison, Wisconsin. We call them branches. And I have been in WILF since about 1978. And I'm more active on the Women, Money, and Democracy Committee. And I'm very excited by the new racial justice and white supremacy work that's happening in WILF, and we need so bad. And that's why I want to be in this meeting to kind of follow along and help build the excitement.
Thanks, Mary. Hey, Philip Cole, we're introducing ourselves by our name, our branch, and your expectations for today's meeting.
I am Philip Cole, and I am a member of the San Francisco branch. And I basically just my expectations is to see the progress that has been made so far. Thank you.
Thanks, Philip. Philip Cole is also an officer, y'all, in WILF. All righty, so here's our agenda. And the reason I said earlier that it will be kind of odd is because I've crafted the agenda based on we've had 2 meetings of this subcommittee. And I've convened, we currently don't have a chair. So that's why I have these existential questions around the scope of work and centering racial justice within WILF. And how we proceed on the agenda depends on how we answer these questions. So to start with, within WILF US, there are a lot of initiatives around racial justice and ending white supremacy right now. There are reading groups, there's the In and Out initiative, there's the work the Black Liberation Caucus is doing, and there are other subcommittees, a subcommittee dealing with ending mass incarceration and abolishing the death penalty. There's a subcommittee on immigration justice. There's a subcommittee on the UN decade on people of African descent and reparations. Is there another? I think those are the other subcommittees. But each of those subcommittees is connected to racial justice. And the work of those subcommittees promotes racial justice. So that's why I pose this first question. which is, are there gaps, given what's already going on, are there gaps in the racial justice work within WILF US? And is this subcommittee vital, meaning it is important to the life and well-being of WILF US and needed because there are gaps or things that need attention that are not being on the radar right now. So I'd like us to discuss that question. Are there gaps that you can identify or you know of? And is this subcommittee vital and needed? So I'm going to stop share so I can see everyone's faces, know if someone's hands up and wants to speak. What are your thoughts? And I know it's difficult if you don't have a lot of experience with WILF US, but I see Mary and then Ian. Go ahead, Mary.
To talk about that question, it would help me more to know a little more about what you said is already happening. You mentioned a reading group and you mentioned an in and out group, and I have no idea what either one of those is doing. Or
well, Mary, frankly, I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that. I know that there, last year, I remember Darian and Joan Goddard, possibly Barbara Nielsen, and several other WILF folks who were reading different books connected to racial justice and ending white supremacy. And I know there was a webinar with an author of one of those books. I'm not going to know the name of it off the top of my head because I didn't go to the webinar.
okay, so that's not something that's like established for the whole WILP to be invited and do in an organized fashion. It's kind of an informal thing.
I don't know. I think the
Okay.
person who knows most about that is Darian, because I think it was at her, I think it was something she initiated, but I'm not sure.
Okay,
The
yeah,
in and
that helps
out
me.
group is, was a project that WILF did that was, that had many grants to have meetings or build connections with WILF members and other organizations or, wow, Teresa Elamine's joining us, and I bet she can answer it. And here's someone who may need to get in. Hold on. Thanks.
George. George, are you there?
Teresa, hello. Thanks for
Oh,
being
yeah.
here. Mary Sanderson from Milwaukee asked a question, and after you introduce yourself, your name, your branch, and your expectations for today, Mary, if you will restate your question, and Teresa may answer it better than I. Thank you.
Is that Mary Sanderson from Madison?
It is.
Oh, I am so glad to meet you. You know my friend Alan Ruff.
I do. I'm excited that you're going to be on the radio on March 10th.
Oh, wonderful. We're going to recruit some members to the Madison branch.
Yeah, we're prepping up for that. We're excited about it. I figured you would.
So you know Marsha Rumble too.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay, good. These are all my comrades. Well, anyway, I'm Teresa Elamine. I live in Columbus, Georgia, the home of Fort Benning and that notorious School of Americas. And the Fannie Lou Hamer branch is a branch that's about to celebrate its 1-year anniversary on March 13th. Thank you, George.
Thank you, Teresa. And Mary, if you'll restate your question, I answered based on what I know, and I know Teresa knows more.
Right, so we were getting to the question in the agenda about what this committee might contribute to the larger racial justice and WILF, because there are, George was mentioning several things that are already going on, and I hope she'll say them again, and then to see what gaps there are.
Yes, there.
And so I didn't understand very well about a reading group, and I understood from George that it was an informal thing. I know I've never seen anything about it on the listserv, so I think it was informal and I don't need to know more about that. But then she mentioned an in and out group that I thought it will help us to figure out gaps if we know what that is.
Well, the in and out group is a membership development project. It does not focus in on diversity, equity, and inclusion. But there is a book club, which Philip Cole knows more about. There are lots of formal initiatives around anti-racism, but the biggest initiative that's about to get started in August probably is the one that George, Rebecca, Jean Kennedy, and possibly Nikki, who's doing the in and out strategy. They're developing materials for that. In addition to that, Darian has been pushing for a committee inside of a board to establish volunteers from the general membership to participate in a board structured effort. There's a lot going on, and like I told George, I really felt that this subcommittee had not found its legs, and it's really like redundant. So I'm hoping, in my expectation for this meeting today, that we put this subcommittee on hold until we sort out a few other things over the next few months, because George is doing a lot. She is burning herself at both ends, and she's the convener of this subcommittee. And I know she's about ready to let go, because the major work that George is going to be doing is going to be what we call ART, A-R-T, Anti-Racism Transformation. It's a project of the Black Liberation Caucus, and there are several members of the Black Liberation Caucus that's working on it. And this committee is somewhat redundant in that way. So I'm hoping that we can give George a break and put this subcommittee on hold.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Teresa. Ian, go ahead. You had your hand up.
Yeah, as far as gaps in the information, I don't have a real good understanding of the WILF board or structure, groups or subgroups or committees. But I recently became involved, and I come from the nuclear issues, weapons testing, nuclear waste, plutonium, shipments to my people's treaty territory in the Great Basin, which is, we have the only ratified treaty in California and Nevada, approximately 4 million acres in California, 25 million in Nevada, 2 million in Idaho, and 2 million in Utah. And what we're dealing with is what we see as the deliberate infliction of conditions intended to bring about the destruction of our land and people by nuclear materials. So we've suffered from the 900 weapons tests. The United States continues to develop nuclear waste in our country, and even recently licensed a site in Texas based on the eventual transportation of nuclear waste to my people's land. And the Department of Energy in the United States cannot prove ownership to that. And what we have also found is that what it really comes down to is genocide, the destruction of a people in whole or in part, or the infliction of conditions intended to bring about the destruction of a people in whole or in part. And there was actual laws such as the Proxmire Act, which is the U.S. implementation of the UN Convention on Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, and 18 United States Code 1091, the Human Rights Enforcement Act of 2009. And in order to prove genocide, we have to prove intent, and it is the culture of secrecy. The United States came into our country violating the treaty of Ruby Valley of 1863, and was giving away our property before there was a United States here. Before the treaty was signed, the United States did this. So, and part of the problem is that here in Nevada, for example, in California, Idaho, and Utah as well, money from federal projects go to the state. That's distributed to every level of unit of local government, except Indians. That's racism. It's our property because they don't own it. It's fraud. It's racketeering, and it is genocide. And is the culture of secrecy. We don't know what's happening out there. We're not getting protected. We don't have registries for radiation exposure. We need those things. We need monitoring, surveillance. We need collaborative research. We need to produce fallout maps. But the administration consistently has said that when we discovered your Indian countries here, the first Christian nation had absolute title and ultimate dominion. That's what the U.S. Supreme Court said in the Marshall Trilogy in 1808, 1812, and 1821, I believe. Chief Justice John Marshall. This is about Indians, and we're being penalized for our lack of belief in Christianity, and we're just trying to survive. We're just trying to live. In 1971, the United States Congress said our Indian ponies are wild horses, and they blamed us and our horses for destroying the land that was caused by the nuclear weapons testing. The United States stole our economy. The other BLM stole our horses. They stole our livestock and blamed us for the destruction caused by nuclear weapons. So that's kind of how we're coming to these issues. And yeah, there's a big gap. It's called genocide. And that's what we're trying to do because other Americans are benefiting. Nevada wants to get a universal income, and we're going to pay for it. Our property is going to pay for that. That's racism, straight out.
You're right, Ian. I absolutely hear you. I'm glad that this meeting is recorded because we have that great information you shared there. I don't know if there's a branch in Las Vegas. We absolutely do not pay adequate attention to environmental racism. And certainly what's happening with stolen land is something to not be ignored. You mentioned
the land is still there. I think the best way to characterize it is property is not a thing. It is a relationship between people with regard to things. And that relationship is based on the treaty, which emanates from international law and Article 6, Section 2 of the United States Constitution. Treaties are supreme. All state laws to the contrary, notwithstanding. I'll be quiet now.
No worries. Thank you. So, Joan, you want to introduce yourself? Tell us your branch and any expectations you have for the next 20-25 minutes, because that's how long we'll be together.
Yeah, I'm sorry to be late. I was on another session with a congresswoman, and I got distracted and didn't keep track of the time. Sorry. Yeah, I'm from the San Jose, California branch, and thank you for having this. I'm sorry to be late. Thank you.
Glad to have you here. Since I don't know California that well, Toyo, will you tell us where you are? And Joan, you might be able to tell Toyo what branch she's closest to.
Okay.
I am from Moreno Valley, California. I'm in Riverside County, which is the southern part. You're more up north.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And the San Francisco Bay Area is where I am. Yeah. There is a Los Angeles branch, and some of the people there are fairly active, but it does not meet regularly, like every month. It's like a lot of us do. So need to get information to you. I'm not sure whether there are any other branches in the Los Angeles area. Have you already done some checking on that, or?
I haven't found anything, and I'm trying to locate. That is one of my goals, to locate which branch that I am connected to, so I can be more
Great.
active. In the
Great. Thank you.
Toya's new. We're glad to have her here. I'm going to mute y'all. So this question is where we were. Are there gaps? Yes, there are some gaps. Environmental racism is a gap. Sharing the information about the book group. Maybe Philip Cole can tell us something about that. But the question, is this subcommittee vital and needed? Teresa proposed that the subcommittee be put on hold. Joan, before you came on, Teresa proposed that the Racial Justice Subcommittee be put on hold. We know that there is a book club although Mary Sanderson never heard about it. We know that Nikki has been doing the membership driving in and out, which has had some discussions about diversity, equity, and inclusion, because I remember one of her reports. And of course, there's the work the Black Liberation Caucus is taking on. So there are, in multiple places, there's work around racial justice and ending white supremacy. It may not be adequate, we don't know yet, but it is in motion. So Teresa proposed, especially since I'm the convener currently, but not the chair, and I do not want to be, I've made that clear from the get-go, that we put the Racial Justice Subcommittee on hold. You created the subcommittees. What do you have to say?
Well, I don't know that I created subcommittees. I think the people who were interested in them created them, and I kind of semi-organized the information. I'm very surprised, Teresa. I don't understand. I think we need to recruit more people and figure out what we need to be doing and everything. But I didn't hear the rest of the discussion, so I don't know what either Teresa or other people said. I certainly hope it's not put on hold, but.
Let's still look for the tax.
Go ahead, Phil.
Yes, you asked about the book group. The book group was convened by Janice Hawkins and Lane Kaiwaski. I know I'm mispronouncing the name, but it was a one-time group that met for 6 weeks over the summer last year. And the book that we were reading was Uprooting Racism by Paul Cavell, who actually also spoke at the Triennial Congress.
We're losing you a little bit, Philip, but what I heard was that the book group read Uprooting Racism by Paul Cavell.
But it was a one deal that was convened. Triennial Congress.
Yes, he spoke at the Triennial Congress, which was in July.
Right.
So that's a one-time thing. Teresa.
To answer Joan's question, Joan, I've told you before that I disagree with the proliferation of subcommittees. You did set up the different subcommittees. Immigration justice, which deals with issues of racial justice, ending mass incarceration and the death penalty, which also deals with issues of racial justice. The UN Decade Committee, subcommittee, will go out of business on December 31st, 2024, because the UN Decade will end. I suggested the UN Decade Subcommittee with the clarity that it was only like what is now a 3-year subcommittee. So I'm real clear strategically that it makes no sense to have layer upon layer of projects and committees dealing with dismantling white supremacy. But I must say that after hearing from the brother in Nevada, it puts a different light on what's possible from this committee, because immigration is not dealing with stolen land and the indigenous people being robbed. When we all talk about how we're on the Muskogee land, we are on the different lands, but it doesn't mean much unless we have the kind of substantive discussion that has been brought to the table today. So I withdraw my motion or suggestion that we put it on hold, because I think the committee needs to possibly change its name. to really focus in on indigenous people because we have never addressed, and I lived in Rhode Island where the Narragansett and other folks, so I know there are many nations around this country that have been robbed. Here where I live, there are markers all over Fort Benning, a military base where they are proud of having slaughtered the Cherokee and the Muskogee and moved them out of Georgia. So it's a different uh, um, uh, it's a different situation. And if he could say his name, the brother who was talking from Nevada, if you could just say your name and where you are in Nevada, because I never heard this story before. And I think for that reason alone, I will withdraw my suggestion about racial justice going out of business or being on hold, because that's the most important information I've heard from an indigenous people's perspective inside of Will. And by the way, we have a Black Liberation Caucus meeting, and I think it would be wonderful if you come and share this on February 27th. And George has your email, so she'll send you the invite. But this is really new information, and I'm so grateful that I was able to get on the call to hear it. So that's what I'm learning in this process, Joan, because I pride myself on thinking strategically, and it made no strategic sense to have this committee. Everything we're dealing with is about racial justice. So this committee didn't have any niche, so to speak, but I think we're starting to develop one with the brother who brought this horrific story, and the violation of treaties is just something that's not addressed. The Lakota are fighting to get their land back. So I do know there are indigenous people who are challenging the United States government over violating the treaties. So it's something we need to know more about, and it's most certainly a racial justice issue. So I just say to the brother from Nevada, tell us more.
My name is Principal Man Ian Zabarti, under Chief Raymond Yowell of the Western Bands of the Shoshone Nation of Indians. We have 6 treaties with the United States, which stretch from Wyoming to the Mojave in Southern California. We have the only ratified treaty in California and Nevada. It includes lands in Utah and Southern Idaho. It's about 30 million acres. We have about 30,000 people, but the United States has engaged in divide and conquer strategies and tactics and uses blood quantum as the way of determining who is and isn't an Indian. So based on blood quantum, which was grandfathered in by the United States, and all funding levels on most of the reservations that you are aware of are held at those levels based on blood quantum. There's no scientific basis for determining the inherent quality of ethnic identity based on blood quantum. It's discrimination, and it focuses that discrimination on our most vulnerable population, our children. So my child is not enrolled in any reservation because he's not enough Indian. And that's part of the assimilation policies. That's why we need the United States, we need President Biden to act based on the Treaty of Ruby Valley, which guarantees a reservation within our Aboriginal territory. My main goal with the United States is to protect my people, protect my land, protect my wildlife and my water. My identity is water. That's the most important thing. But it's also to make legitimate the current trespassing and occupation by other Americans. We're not giving up our property rights because the treaty's in full force and effect. What we are doing is acting on Article 6, where the president, at our request, and we will voluntarily go there, creates that reservation for our protection. And that's what's missing right now. We have no way to protect our people, and our people are going to college. So I have a college education. And the reason why I'm in Las Vegas is because my reservation is 300 miles north of here. It's 300 miles east of Reno. It's 300 miles west of Salt Lake and 300 miles south of Boise, Idaho. The nearest town is 80 miles one way. Okay, there's no jobs on my reservation for college educated people, and all of my people are getting educated and they're coming back to the reservation, and there's nothing there for them. There's nothing there. The United States stole our economy. Now they're saying, oh, I can become a rancher. I did that 40 years ago and my whole horses were stolen. 16 people, I know you've not heard this before, but 16 people, they moved 2 million people into Las Vegas in the last 40 years, okay? 2 million people in the last 40 years, and 16 of them said, who don't know anything about Indians, said, we're violating the Wild Horse and Burro Act. We were acquitted. I was acquitted right downtown in Las Vegas in 1990 for rounding up wild horses. These are our horses, our Indian ponies. We loved our horses and they stole them. I can't do that anymore. We have no economy and we need that treaty reservation. So that's what we need. And we need to be able to protect ourselves from the radioactive fallout. It's still out there. It's everywhere. It goes across the continent. The fallout maps stop at Canada, but it keeps going. So those are the main issues that we're trying to deal with. You know, there's another thing, you know, even though we live in the United States, we have all of the elements of statehood. We create our own passports. We travel abroad on our own identity documents. Travel abroad, you know, different visas from places we go. We do these things. This is our identity. And that is why we're being so abused, because the United States doesn't want to give up what it believes it belongs to it, because there's been 900 nuclear weapons tests in secret conducted in my country. And we're still dying from that, okay? And we're not completely dead. We're not all dying. We're just not thriving. We're not succeeding. We have no opportunities. That's why I'm in Las Vegas and I have computer access. We don't have those on the reservation, and my people are sitting there and they have no opportunities for the future. Yeah, we can be an Indian, but you know, everyone else is stealing our opportunities. Now,
Hey, Ian.
to be clear, sharing is our custom. That's why we signed this treaty with the United States, okay? We're willing to pay for universal income. 70% of US resource production comes from our country, including lithium now, gold, 70% of gold, silver, we have oil. We have these riches here, and it's being stolen by these transnational mining corporations. And we need to transform that situation to one where Americans and these corporations are doing legitimate work rather than trespassing and violating and abusing my people. My family is the one that's dying. I'm protecting my land. I'm protecting my family, and I have to protect the water because that's what's really important.
Hey, Ian.
Yes.
Our meetings end in an hour, so we have 17 more minutes. Queen Mother Blakely is coming in. I want her to be able to introduce herself. But at the Black Liberation Caucus, which is on February 27th at 4 p.m. Eastern, so that's probably 2 maybe for you, or I'm not sure, Las Vegas. I'm not facilitating that meeting, Ian, but I will ask that there's time on the agenda for you to share and for people to have Q&A, if that's at all possible. I don't control that agenda. It's not my month, but I'll ask the person who is. Thank you so much for bringing that to us. And thanks, Teresa, for lifting it up as a legitimate use of the Racial Justice Subcommittee. So many of the WILF women introduce themselves by saying whose land they're on. Let's see if we can really get some work and organizing going on in those places so that people are doing something for real. Queen Mother, welcome. Please introduce yourself. Tell us your name and your branch and any thoughts you have for us today. We're going to close in about 15 minutes.
Thank you. Queen Mother been quite active, and I'm just returning from Africa. In the spirit of my ancestors, I come before all of you that are on the Zoom today. In the spirit of my ancestors, and I carry the legacy of Queen Mother Audley Moore, who stood on one single issue, and that was reparations. She said, honey, go get your reparation, go get your money. Don't talk about it, but go get it. And for 80 years, that was her one single thought. They owe you for the greatest crime committed against you. And so I know spiritually in the realm that she's in, she's very pleased that it has caught on fire, that reparation is the language and the word of the day. Reparations now, reparations, reparations. And I made it clear to Queen Mother once she became an ancestor, living to be almost 100 years old, and being with her for about 20 years, chosen by her to come to her side. I never understood why I became a Oshoyomi, but it made clear sense today. And as I promised her to continue to raise reparation in the world that I live in for the last 53 years going on, and that is at the United Nations as a humanitarian. In the village and in the city of Harlem, I'm the community mayor of Harlem, and agitating at the local level, it behooves of us also to agitate at the national and international. At the international level of being involved with the UN, and thanks women like Shirley Chisholm, which gave me an opportunity to engage her as our congresswoman and the first woman to run for president of the United States, of joining.
I apologize, Queen Mother. I didn't let you know that we had 3 minutes for each person, and you've gone over those.
Oh,
I'm
Queen
sorry.
Mother, no, don't be sorry. Thank you for letting me know.
I should have told you.
And Queen Mother, yield the chair back to you. Thank you so kindly.
Thank you. Toya, your and Mary's hand was up before Queen Mother spoke. Do you still have questions or comments? Toya does not. Mary? Nope, you're good. All right then, Teresa.
Philip, what is that?
Okay, Teresa and then Philip.
Well, since we have just a few minutes left, I think it would be very good if we start talking about action, because Queen Mother led us to the crux of the issue, because what Ian is demanding is reparations. See, reparations have been provided to a number of people. The folks who were treated the way they were treated by Germany as Jews, Germany still pays reparations to the state of Israel, as I understand it. The Japanese people who were interred in concentration camps in the US received reparations. So reparations is something that those of us who have the distinction of being put into bondage and taken from Africa and brought in all around the world, we are descendants of enslaved Africans. And so we're fighting for reparations. But what Ian has helped me understand is that these violations of all the treaties and everything else has to be repaired. We're fighting for reparations. And I think that when we frame it in that way, in terms of racial justice, the question is always there, George, what should the remedy be? And so we have several proposals in the Black Liberation Movement about what the remedy should be, or remedies. And I think Ian and people who are indigenous, and I mean all over this country, treaties have been broken. So what should the remedies be. And I think that this Racial Justice Committee, even though the UN decade and reparations, we'll be fighting for reparations after the UN decade closes on December 31st, 2024. But I don't want to see us have a reparations subcommittee. We could bring our work into racial justice and be in solidarity with Ian and the indigenous people to fight for reparations for indigenous people, Black people, and other folks who have been violated really by the US government. So I just want us to start thinking about that. So when we get to our next meeting, we could possibly come up, you know me, George, I'm all about the strategic plan. So what can we accomplish based on what Ian's self-determination is saying to us? Because it's his struggle and he has to say to us what the demands are. I know what the demands are in the Black liberation struggle to remedy the fact that we've been incarcerated by the millions, to remedy the fact that we have been denied access to economic opportunities, to remedy the fact that we've been denied adequate health care, housing, etc. So we do have a list in from a Black liberation standpoint, having been enslaved and discriminated against for hundreds of years by this US government, really lynchings and everything else. So we do have a program. And Ian, I think we need to hear more about your program. And I think the next step is most certainly the Black Liberation Caucus meeting on February 27th. And George, we could get up with Rebecca today. So she's just formulating the agenda and she has an hour that she's trying to deal with. So I just wanted to put that out. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to go to Philip Cole and then determine the next meeting and who's going to facilitate that. Okay, Philip.
Okay, I just want to embrace the Ian to the community and remind everybody that there's been a long history of collaboration between the African Americans in this country and the Indian community. My family gave refuge to Indians who escaped from the Trail of Tears, because basically they were enslaved and marched across this country. And also the Indians participated in the Underground Railroad in their avenue of escape. And also, as far as the treaties go, it's my understanding that any American surplus land that's not being used by the U.S. military should revert to Indian community, such as Alcatraz. And that's what the dispute over Alcatraz was, that when the U.S. government quit using Alcatraz as a prison legally, that land reverted to Indian control, and they were able to manage and keep that island for themselves for a great deal of time, except for things went awry, and now it's been turned into the most popular tourist attraction in America. And I think Alcatraz should be returned to the Indian community, and they should get the revenue from it being a tourist attraction. Thank you.
Thanks, Philip. That might be a good proposal to bring to the next Racial Justice Subcommittee meeting, where I hope, as Teresa proposed, that folks take on what are the remedies for the many grievances Ian told us are going on right now, not history, not past, present. And how do we help make those remedies happen? So we can set a date for a next meeting, but first, who cares to step up and facilitate the next Racial Justice Subcommittee meeting? Don't all jump at once. See you giggling, Toya. Anyone? You are not my friends. All right, then. So it stays on my plate if there's no one who takes it. And I'm going to trust Ian that you will be there to help us shape these remedies and recommendations. We'll try to
So
get our,
I will, and I just don't step up because I'm trying to become familiar with everyone first.
no, I totally get that. I mean, this was the first meeting for 3 people. Toya, Ian, Amani, and Mary, 4. So half of us almost were here for the first time. Thank you so much for being here. Now let's look at the date for the next meeting for March. I can figure out how. Share the calendar. There we go. I am very happy to see how open my March calendar looks right now.
Well, George,
Yes.
if I may, this has been a kind of standard that the racial justice meetings are at 1 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. The UN decade meetings are at 7 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. And we established that those meetings would happen on the first Friday. And so I think it would be good to kind of establish that. So something so that we're not jumping all over the calendar. And I don't want to do the meeting, do the 2 subcommittee meetings in the same day, as was the case on February 4th, I think. So if we could choose a date in March, and since we have the Black Liberation Caucus meeting coming up soon, where this topic will be further discussed, I would like to look towards March 18th. So I'm proposing Friday, I believe, is March 18th. And we could meet at 1 o'clock in the afternoon so we could start to establish some regularity. I believe that may be the 3rd Friday, but I'd like to see us do that because there are like 5 subcommittees of the Advancing Human Rights Committee. And I think that's something that Ian and other new members should know. This Racial Justice Committee falls under Advancing Human Rights. And there are like 5 subcommittees, and we all try not to run into each other. And many of us have established a particular day and time where we meet. And George, I think it's time to do that for racial justice. Over.
Thank you. Is everyone here available on March 18th, 1 p.m. Eastern? Yes, very good. So that'll be the next Racial Justice Subcommittee. Toya, what were you saying?
On Fridays, for California time, you said 1, so that'd be 10. On Fridays from the hours of 9 to 2, I'm in a lot of meetings, and it's like consistent. It has been like that for quite some time now.
So 2 is 5 for us. How do people feel about 5? Yes.
Oh, George, Toya is a little mixed up, but it seems like her whole morning is taken up. So you were able to get in this meeting, Toya?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Are
Only
you
because they canceled today. But I normally have things scheduled every Friday from like 9 a.m. to at least 2. My last meeting is at 2 on Fridays.
Okay. Well, 2 on Friday. Well, that means that you would be free starting at 3 on Friday?
At 2, so the meeting ends at 2. So I can be
Oh,
transferred, jump right over to the next meeting, to this
Two.
meeting.
Well, that would be 5 Eastern time, George, and I'm okay with that. So if everybody's okay with 5 p.m. Eastern time and 2 p.m. Pacific time, we want everybody in, nobody out. So if everybody is okay with that, I certainly think I have a completely clean calendar for March 18th myself. But since Toya raised the time conflict, I'd like to see us accommodate her participation, George, if that's possible. Okay, so
I think it is. Joan Goddard clapped. Ian gave us the, the nod. Amani, Queen Mother, the 18th, Eastern Time, 5 p.m. All right?
Much. Thank you.
Yes? All right. Yay. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day and a good weekend.
Thank you,
Bye.
George. Love you so
Bye.
much. Oh, George, send me the Zoom link for the Madeline Reese meeting, which is starting now.
Yes, ma'am. All right, y'all.
Blessing for
Peace.
your